Today is the 6th day of this May 1983 7-day retreat. And since we did not finish the Koan yesterday, we will do so today. It is case number 55 of the Blue Cliff record, in a translation presented by Sekida. We've added a few other words from other translations and we'll mention that. The case title is Dogo's I Would Not Tell You. Before beginning with that, I want to bring up a few things. That come up during meetings. First of all, if something is mentioned in a talk that comes out of a meeting with you, it is never mentioned to expose you or to be personal about anything. Even though you may feel that way or may not feel that way. The reason it is mentioned is because it is not personal, but it applies to everyone. Illustrates what is universal in all of us. And it is mentioned for all of us to look into it, to see it, or at least to take note of it intellectually, whichever way. If certain feelings come up while something, quote, personal, unquote, is mentioned, can one immediately look at those feelings and where they come from? Whether behind them is an image of oneself, which is what is our universal dis-ease. Living in our images, which are vulnerable to hurt, to attack, and to flattery. Everything that happens which triggers upset or boost, feeling of being boosted, it's all worth looking at, seeing into. What is it? So that whatever happens to us, happens within us, painful as it may seem or obstructive, can turn out to be a helping hand or a door to where you don't know. In what was said yesterday about tears welling up in the presence of sorrow, sadness, either at the loss of someone or whenever. What I said was understood as saying there should not be any tears, one should not express one's sorrow. The person wasn't quite sure whether this is what I meant, but at least this is how it was received. Please understand that in this teaching, if we call it that, there is never any should. That's the very essence of it, that there isn't. So when there's crying, sobbing, tears welling up, does one think that shouldn't happen right now? Or is one with it, really with it? Or is there an image of being a victim, a sufferer? I want to know. I want to see it. If there is. If there's self-pity, I want to see it. So I'm not ruled by that, and driven or encased by it. When anger wells up, and it's not seen, of course it's being expressed. That's what anger is all about, expressing emotions, or controlling them, controlling any expression. So don't interpret what is being said as I must not express. I must rather look at it. I ought to look at it rather than express it. Is it possible to see anger? Most of the time it's only after the explosion has taken place. And one may look at it. But if, for some reason the attention is there at the moment the anger wells up, and there's a real yearning to see what this is all about, what is it? Then one will find on one's own that one doesn't express it because all the energy is in the seeing and the looking or in the listening. What is it? Attending. And there's nothing left over for the expression of it. So let us be aware of the shoulds, because they are the separation from what is happening according to old conditioned ways pounded into us or adopted by us for security. We like shoulds because then we don't have to think for ourselves. Then it seems as though the path is laid out before us. But we're not in touch with what is really going on. And should any guideline break down, then we're at a loss, confused and upset because we don't know what to do. Tell me. Then we try to look for someone again to tell us what to do. And a new dependency relationship may develop. I'll read the main subject once more, but then we'll pick up where we left off yesterday. Main subject reads, one day Dogo, a Zen teacher, accompanied by his disciple Zeggen, went to visit a family in which a funeral was to take place in order to express sympathy. Zeggen, the disciple, touched the coffin and said, "Please tell me, is this life or is this death?" Dogo said, "I would not tell you whether this is life or whether this is death." Zeggen said, "Why don't you tell me?" Dogo said, "No, I would not tell you." On their way home, Zeggen said, "Teacher, please be kind enough to tell me. If not, I'll hit you." Dogo said, "Strike me if you like, but I would not tell you." And Zeggen struck Dogo. Later, Dogo passed away. Zeggen came to Sekiso, who was his successor, and told him the whole story. Sekiso said, "I would not tell you whether it is life or it is death." Zeggen said, "Why don't you tell me?" Sekiso said, "No, I would not tell you. Upon these words, Zeggen attained sudden realization. One day, Zeggen, carrying a hoe, went up and down the lecture hall as if he were searching for something. Sekiso said, "What are you doing?" Zeggen said, "I am searching for the spiritual remains of our dead teacher." Sekiso said, "Limitless expanse of mighty roaring waves, foaming waves wash the sky. What relic of the deceased teacher do you seek?" And here, another commentator to this comment says, "Alas, alas." Zeggen said, in reply to his teacher, "It is a way of acquiring strength." The Cleary translation says, "This is just where I should apply effort." And Sekida's comment says, "This is an idiomatic way of expressing gratitude, saying, 'I thank you.'" And Sekiso said, "The deceased teacher's spiritual remains still exist." I don't think we said anything yesterday about the fact of the repetitiousness of the words. First, of Dogo, 3 times in a row saying the same thing, and then the other man, the new teacher, saying exactly the same words. And in an old commentary, which goes with one of these translations, the 10th or 11th century commentary, at the point where Sekiso says the same thing as his predecessor, the commentator says, "How fresh, how new." That's what happens when all of a sudden one doesn't hear words anymore, but one sees something in oneself. In oneself, in quotation marks. It's not the self that's seeing, it's just seeing. Not of the words or the meaning of the words or what is associated with them from past learning and remembering, but what is in front of one, what is here. And all of a sudden the words seem to be fresh, but what's fresh is neither the words nor no words, but the seeing. Because it is not dusted over, blurred with old stuff. So what is this thing of Zeggen going into the lecture hall, walking up and down, hoeing? The commentators say it is his way of expressing his understanding. Displaying his insight, as one put it. His insight into what? Maybe he wants to say, "I really understand what my old teacher said." And then he goes hoeing there in the lecture hall. And Sekiso said, "What are you doing?" Because let's remember that the last communication between the student and the teacher was a slap handed to the teacher by the student.
And as I think I read yesterday from the comment that this is considered a very grave misdemeanor. So that the teacher advised the student to leave the place for a while, for fear of some revengeful act being taken against him, which shows that the teacher was not hurt. Why should he be? If there's no image, then nothing gets hurt, except the cheek. If that arouses anger, and if you get hit verbally or physically, is it possible that there be some space to look what gets hurt? Our response happens so quickly, the hurt or the hitting back, verbally or physically. And nothing is seen and everything is perpetuated, tit for tat, until that instant of seeing and looking, motionlessly, quiet, not knowing, and therefore infinite space. Zeggen said, I'm looking for the spiritual relics or remains of our dead teacher. One commentator says, how green he is. What are the spiritual remains of a teacher? Actually, this question was already asked of the Buddha. Innumerable times people wanted to know what happens, they didn't exactly say to you, but to the sage when he dies. All this fascination with what happens in the future, because then we don't have to look at this not so fascinating present. And the Buddha never answered that question. It was one of the unanswerable questions that he laid down. There were several others, I forget, but this was one of them. He just refused to answer this because, of course, if you busy yourself with that, what a nice escape. Because you could say the teacher's thoughts and words, scriptures that have been made out of the words, those are the spiritual remains to be revered. I wonder whether it was in the spirit of the teacher himself that this happened. Anyways, what are words and memories, images, or regrets about what one did or didn't do at the time of his life? What is all that? What's the substance of it? The effect of it we can feel. Fears are, physical manifestations. Tensions, knots, ulcers, throbbing, whatever. It's a little bit different for everyone, but thoughts have physical accompaniment, physical manifestation. One thought can set the whole body into some kind of emotion, of anxiety or rage. And where do the thoughts come from? Are they, well, this man is looking for it. Maybe he's just putting on a demonstration there, as it says, of his understanding, being one with the teacher by getting sort of demonstrating, getting in touch with him. We don't know. But Sekiso says, he says, limitless, listen to it, limitless expanse of mighty roaring waves, foaming waves wash the sky. The ocean, waves, and where do the waves end and the sky start? Is there any crack between heaven and earth? Are they two? Where is there a crack except in thinking? Thinking cracks up what is whole and complete and limitless. Thinking makes it limited and limiting. A metaphor like this occurs quite frequently in Zen sayings. Waves touching the sky. Or the waves in Korea touching the sky in the west. Meaning no distance. No distance. All one. But not as a fine metaphor. One is that, all one. What relics are you looking for, he continues. What relic of the deceased teacher do you seek? This whole business of relics, not confined to Buddhism, where supposedly the relics, the bones of the Buddha, were sort of acquired by different, I don't know what you call it, orders, monasteries, groups, societies, and stupas built over them, which are structures, temple-like structures, in which one reveres those relics, which are still supposed to emanate the spirit of the Buddha, the energy, whatever. I don't know whether it's put into words. I've never been to one of those places. They are circumambulated with chanting. And yet it's quite possible that a person who does this would laugh at a Catholic who reveres the relics of a saint. May not, but may. I've heard it. Of course, then comes the comparison. What is the Buddha in comparison to the saint, or vice versa? But to a person who worships and reveres, that's it. Mine, not yours. And the division is there, and the separation, and different forms of subtle pride or attachment. Don't say, no, not for me. I see the emptiness of the relic. If you see the emptiness of the relic, then why? Well, I don't want to get into all that. I'd rather read from Huang Po
an 8th century, I believe 8th century or 9th century Chinese master. We read quite often from him. The Japanese name is Obaku. Obaku. He had a very devoted disciple who was a scholar. Wrote down, as we hope, very meticulously what Wang Po said, and he asked him many questions which Wang Po very patiently answered. And here's this question. If the Buddha really dwells in matchless tranquility beyond the multiplicity of forms, how is it that his body yielded 84 pecks of relics? The footnote by John Blofeld says, this rather naive questioner is confusing the Buddha as synonymous with the absolute, with the historical figure of Gautama. Or is confusing the Buddha as synonymous with the absolute, or the Buddha as the absolute, is confused here with the historical figure of Gautama. And Huang Po responds, if you really think like that, you are confusing the transitory relics with the real. The questioner says, are there really such things as sariras? That's probably the Sanskrit word for Buddha's relics. Are there really such things as Buddha's relics, or are they the Buddha's accumulated merits? Does this word refer to his real bones or to his accumulated merits? He's giving a new interpretation to it. And Wang Po says, there are no such things. There are no merits. There are not merits. They are not merits. Sorry. There are no such things. They are not merits. Trying to wipe the whole slate clean of that. But the questioner comes back. Then why is it written, quote, the Buddha relics are ethereal and subtle, the golden ones are indestructible, unquote. What does your reverence say to that? And Wang Po says, if you harbor such beliefs, why call yourself a student of Zen? Can you imagine bones in the void? Says Wang Po. That's Wang Po speaking. Of course you can imagine bones in the void, because you can imagine things. Where does the imagination come from, and who is the image maker? That's where the questioner needs to settle and dig. Not with the products of the imagination, which give much solace and comfort and good feelings, and feelings of togetherness with others who do the same thing, and feelings of separation of others who don't do the same thing. Huang Po continues, the minds of all the Buddhas are one with the great void. What bones do you expect to find there? And the questioner says, but if I'd actually seen some of these relics, what then? He's not ashamed to express his feelings, his doubts. He could have shut up by now, thinking, oh God, I don't want to appear dumb in the eye. I don't want Wang Po to think that I'm dumb or don't understand him, so I'll sort of be quiet as though I understood. He doesn't do that. He doesn't understand, so he keeps asking. Also, he may not be looking very hard.
He's so busy with his questions. And he has studied a lot, read a lot in the venerable texts. So, but if I had actually seen of these relics, some of these relics, what then? And Wang Po says, you would have seen the products of your own wrong thinking. Questioner says, does your reverence have any of those relics? Many temples have one. I've read that. It's not a rare thing. Whether they all came from the Buddha, one can question. But there are many, many stupas, and each stupa is supposed to be built over a relic of the Buddha. Does your reverence have any of those relics? Please let us see them. And Wang Po says, a true relic would be hard to see. To find it, you would have to crush mighty Mount Sumeru to find dust, using only your bare hands. To find a relic, a true relic, you have to crush Mount Sumeru. Mount Sumeru, in the Indian cosmology, was that world mountain in the center of the universe, rising to whatever height, very tall, all the oceans and continents around it, and very often used as a metaphor for the ego. The center of all things, and very, very tall, very high, so that one automatically looks down on other things. It's a good metaphor. And he says, to find a true relic, can Mount Sumeru, he says you would have to crush it with bare fists, which gives very easily the notion, I have to crush that Mount Sumeru, which is Mount Sumeru speaking. Because I want something out of that crushed mountain, a true relic I want. So rather, can it crush? Can it disintegrate? Or just not be there, even for an instant? It can only happen when there is no wanting. For anything, relics or otherwise. So here to the question, what relic of the deceased teacher do you seek? Zeggen says it's a way of acquiring strength. It sort of seems to go along with the possible feelings of the questioner and of many people who do revere relics, a way of acquiring strength. I feel so weak. I feel dreadfully weak, helpless, impotent. Where can I charge the batteries? And it's so simple. Can one be with that weakness? Completely. What is it? What is it if I don't call it weakness? I don't compare it to strength. to others who seem to have so much of it and I have so little of it. Comparison consumes energy because it arouses physical feelings, emotions, and their consequences. It's so simple to just be with that weakness, to be that. Not as an image, I'm a weak person. You don't know what it is. You don't know who you are, what you are at that moment. The thought always comes afterwards. Who, moo, what? Or what am I going to do? One comment by Sekida says, this is just an idiomatic way of saying thank you to the teacher. Or maybe, I'm sorry for hitting you. But let's talk a little bit about this thank you, about gratitude. When there is a tremendous release from a tremendous burden one has carried, a moment of freeing or clarity, well, at that moment usually it is clear because there are no thoughts. But then, very often, accompanied by thoughts or evoked by thoughts, feelings of gratitude arise for the teacher or the situation. And a great need or urge to express that gratitude, which can be done. Thank you. It comes quite spontaneous. Some people say there is no such thing as at a moment like that. Often it is remembering I ought to be grateful because we've been brought up that way, to say thank you for everything that's done for us or given to us. It's a nice manner, a nice way of interrelating. Please and thank you. And it can have real feeling of love with it. Real love, not wanting something back. Not wanting, then there's love. And that already is the expression of gratitude. But gratitude can become institutionalized. It is being institutionalized very often. Institutionalized days of thanksgiving, gratitude to veterans or past statesmen, generals, presidents, or to the Buddhas and patriarchs. You may say, what lack of taste to mention it in one breath. It wasn't meant that way. When gratitude becomes institutionalized, it so often becomes a mechanical thing that one does, maybe for merit, or because it is being done, one doesn't want to be outside of what happens where one associates. But the heart isn't there. Because it is institutionalized, it is mechanical.
On Veterans Day, who really thinks of the people who have killed and have been killed in wars? And I mean really thinking of this whole monstrosity that we bring about. And just thinking of past veterans who have died, is this a way of bringing war to an end here and now? Giving thanks to past benefactor factors? Past saints, past Buddhas, gods, divinities. Does it mean that one lives with love and compassion? Now, freely, without needing inspiration for that? It is for everyone to look at. Some people have told me or written me, people just follow what you say. They just do it because you do it or don't do it. I'm not sure. Is this so? If it is so, look at it. I'm not trying to tell you what to do or not to do. Just put into words what is seen, and it's for you to see whether this is so or is not so. Not to blindly follow what is said, or done or not done. The last words of Sekiso are, the deceased teacher's spiritual remains still exist. Is he saying something in opposition to what we just read by Wang Po? That there are no such things? Or is he saying the same thing as Wang Po when he says to find a true relic, Mount Sumeru needs to crush to dust. What's with us is words and memories and institutions. Can that be seen through? It can if it's being questioned, with a mind that is free from conclusions or assumptions. Free to look, free to question, and free to be silent, quiet, motionless, in not knowing. What is it? Who am I? Or what am I to do? we will end here for today.